You see, the first step to finding the time to succeed in life is deciding what truly matters. That sounds simple, but it's one of the most difficult disciplines a person can practice. Because every day life competes for your attention. The phone rings, messages arrive, obligations pile up. And before you know it, the day is gone, not because you didn't have time, but because you didn't decide what deserved it. Time is neutral. It doesn't choose sides. It doesn't decide your future. You do. And the moment you decide what truly matters, you begin to take control of your hours instead of letting your hours control you. Most people drift. They wake up and react. They respond to whatever is loudest, whatever is nearest, whatever is easiest. But successful people don't drift, they direct. They don't start their day asking, "What do I feel like doing?" They start with, "What must be done if I am serious about my future?" Clarity is power. When you are clear about your goals, you stop negotiating with distractions. When you are clear about your purpose, you stop giving priority to trivial things. It's amazing how much time you suddenly find when you stop wasting it on what doesn't move your life forward. Let me ask you something important. If someone followed you around for 1 week and wrote down exactly how you spent every hour, would they be able to tell what matters most to you? Because what you say matters and what you schedule are often two different things. You can say your health matters, but do you schedule exercise? You can say your growth matters, but do you schedule learning? You can say your dreams matter, but do you schedule progress? The calendar doesn't lie. It reveals priorities. Success begins the moment you decide that some activities are more valuable than others. And that requires courage, because when you say yes to something meaningful, you must say no to something comfortable. You must say no to mindless scrolling, no to unnecessary meetings, no to time-consuming habits that give you little in return. You cannot build an extraordinary life with ordinary focus. You must become selective, very selective. Think of your time like currency. Every hour is an investment, and just like money, you can spend it, waste it, or invest it. The difference between a successful life and a frustrated one often comes down to where those daily investments go. If you invest your time in learning, you gain knowledge. If you invest your time in practice, you gain skill. If you invest your time in discipline, you gain results. But if you invest your time in distractions, you gain regret. And here's the powerful truth. You don't need more time to succeed. You need stronger reasons. When your reasons become clear enough, your schedule adjusts. When someone says, "I don't have time," what they usually mean is, it's not important enough yet, because we always make time for what feels urgent or meaningful. The challenge is to make your long-term goals feel just as urgent as your short-term obligations. You must learn to pause and ask yourself, does this activity move me closer to the life I want? If the answer is no, then you must have the discipline to reduce it, delegate it, or eliminate it. This doesn't mean you ignore responsibilities. It means you approach them with intention. It means you design your day instead of allowing it to design you. And design requires thought. It requires reflection. It requires sitting down, even for a few quiet minutes, and deciding what kind of person you want to become. Because once you decide who you want to be, your priorities become clearer, and when your priorities are clear, your time begins to align. You don't find time for success by accident, you create it by decision. Successful people are not superhuman. They simply choose differently. They choose growth over comfort. They choose preparation over procrastination. They choose discipline over distraction, and those small, daily choices compound into extraordinary results. Remember, life doesn't reward intention. It rewards action aligned with intention, and action only happens when time is allocated. If your dream is worth achieving, it is worth scheduling. If your future is worth improving, it is worth protecting your hours. So start with one decision. Decide what truly matters. Decide what deserves your best energy. Decide what kind of life you refuse to settle without. And once you decide, guard it, because the moment you become clear about what matters most, you stop searching for time and you start making it. Now, once you've decided what truly matters, the next step is learning how to turn small time into big progress. Because here's what discourages most people. They look at their goals and think they need massive blocks of time to make a difference. They imagine success requires free weekends, long vacations, perfect conditions, and since life rarely offers those, they postpone their dreams. But success is not built in large chunks of time. It is built in small, consistent investments. Let me share something simple but powerful. A focused 30 minutes a day equals more than 180 hours a year. 1 hour a day equals 365 hours a year. That's the equivalent of weeks of concentrated effort without ever needing a dramatic change in your schedule. The problem isn't that we don't have time. The problem is that we underestimate what small time can do. 15 minutes of reading every day may not feel impressive, but at the end of a year, it could mean several books completed. And books change ideas, ideas change decisions, decisions change direction, and direction changes destiny. 30 minutes of exercise a day may not seem life-altering, but over months it changes your energy, your confidence, your health. And when your energy improves, your productivity improves. When your productivity improves, your results improve. It's the small disciplines that carry the greatest power. Most people are waiting for motivation to strike before they act. But progress doesn't come from bursts of inspiration. It comes from commitment to small daily actions. The farmer doesn't plant an entire year's harvest in one afternoon. He plants a little each day. He waters consistently. He tends carefully, and over time, the harvest appears. Your goals work the same way. You don't write a book in a weekend. You write a page a day. You don't master a skill overnight. You practice daily. You don't transform your finances instantly. You improve your habits gradually. What you do consistently outweighs what you do occasionally, and here's where discipline becomes your greatest ally. Because small efforts don't feel dramatic, they don't feel exciting, they don't attract applause, but they compound quietly. Like interest in a bank account, they grow beyond what you can see at first. The danger is this: because the results aren't immediate, people stop. They say it's not working, but growth is often invisible before it becomes undeniable. Imagine improving just 1% each day. 1% doesn't seem like much, but over time, those tiny improvements stack on top of each other. And before long, you are operating at a completely different level, not because of one grand effort, but because of repeated small ones. The key is to stop despising small beginnings. Sometimes we overlook the margins of our day, those in-between moments. The early morning before the house wakes up, the commute, the lunch break, the quiet evening hour. We let those minutes slip away because they seem insignificant. But if you guard those margins, they can become the birthplace of mastery. Great achievements are rarely the result of giant leaps. They are the result of steady steps, and steady steps require a shift in thinking. Instead of asking, "Do I have enough time?" ask, "What can I do with the time I have?" That question changes everything. It moves you from excuse to creativity. It forces you to look for opportunity instead of obstacles. Maybe you don't have 3 hours, but you have 30 minutes. Use it. Maybe you don't have perfect silence, but you have a focused corner. Use it. Maybe you don't have ideal circumstances, but you have today. Use it. Momentum begins with movement, not magnitude. When you act daily, even in small ways, something powerful happens inside you. You build confidence. You begin to see yourself as someone who follows through, and identity is powerful. When you see yourself as disciplined, you act with discipline. When you see yourself as consistent, you remain consistent. Small promises kept to yourself build self-trust. And self-trust fuels bigger commitments. You see, the difference between the average person and the extraordinary one is not necessarily talent. It is consistency. It is the willingness to show up when it's convenient and when it's inconvenient. It is the understanding that every small effort is a vote for the person you are becoming. Don't wait for a free week to begin. Don't wait for next month. Don't wait for motivation. Start with what you have. Start where you are. Start small, but start, because the secret to big success is hidden in small, repeated actions, and when you honor the small hours, the big results will take care of themselves. Now, once you understand the power of small, consistent action, there comes another turning point, and this one separates the interested from the committed. It's the moment you replace excuses with ownership. You see, excuses are subtle. They don't sound dangerous. They sound reasonable. I'm too busy right now. This season is hectic. I'll start when things settle down. And the tragedy is, those statements feel justified. Life is busy. Responsibilities are real. Demands are constant. But here's the truth. Life rarely settles down. In fact, if you're fortunate enough to grow, it becomes more demanding, not less, more opportunity, more responsibility, more complexity. If you wait for a clear calendar before you commit to success, you may wait your entire life. Ownership begins when you stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start asking, "What can I do about it?" That question shifts the power back to you. It's easy to blame circumstances, easy to point to the economy, the schedule, the boss, the family obligations. And certainly, circumstances influence us, but they do not control our decisions unless we allow them to. The difference between those who move forward and those who remain stuck is not the absence of problems. It is the refusal to let problems dictate direction. When you take ownership of your time, you stop saying, "I didn't have time," and you start saying, "I didn't make time." That small change in language is powerful because once you admit you didn't make time, you also admit that you could. Ownership is empowering. You begin to realize that every day is a series of choices. You choose when to wake up. You choose what to focus on. You choose what deserves your energy. And while you may not control everything that happens, you always control your response. Let me ask you something important. If success were entirely your responsibility, no one else to blame, no one else to credit, how differently would you use your hours? That's the mindset of a leader. A leader doesn't wait for ideal conditions. A leader adapts. A leader adjusts. A leader acts anyway. The phrase "I'm too busy" often hides a deeper issue, a lack of intentional planning. Because busy is not the same as productive, you can be busy all day and still make no progress toward your dreams. Activity is not accomplishment. Ownership forces you to evaluate your busyness. It challenges you to separate what is necessary from what is habitual. Sometimes we are not overwhelmed by responsibilities. We are overwhelmed by poor boundaries. Saying yes to everything is not a virtue. It is often avoidance of difficult goals, avoidance of disciplined effort, avoidance of the discomfort that growth requires. When you take ownership, you begin to protect your time with greater care. You stop overcommitting. You stop filling every open space. You learn to say, "That doesn't align with my priorities," and that sentence can change your life. But ownership is not only about managing your schedule, it is about managing yourself. Time management is really self-management. If you struggle with procrastination, ownership says, "It's my discipline that needs strengthening." If you struggle with distraction, ownership says, "It's my focus that needs training." If you struggle with inconsistency, ownership says, "It's my habits that need adjusting." This is not about self-criticism. It is about self-leadership, because the moment you accept full responsibility for your growth, you become unstoppable. No longer waiting, no longer blaming, no longer postponing. And here's something remarkable. When you stop making excuses, you gain clarity. You begin to see opportunities where you once saw obstacles. You start finding pockets of time because you are actively looking for them instead of explaining their absence. The human mind is powerful. Give it an excuse, and it will justify an action. Give it responsibility, and it will search for solutions. Ownership transforms your mindset from "I can't" to "how can I?" That question unlocks creativity. It unlocks discipline. It unlocks progress. You may not control the length of your day, but you control the depth of your commitment. You may not eliminate every challenge, but you can choose how you respond to them. And when you respond with ownership, you step into maturity. Success is not reserved for those with perfect circumstances. It belongs to those who accept responsibility for imperfect ones. So instead of saying, "I don't have the time," say, "I will make the time." Instead of saying, "someday," say, "today." Instead of waiting for life to cooperate, decide to cooperate with your own potential, because the moment you replace excuses with ownership is the moment your future begins to change. Now, after you've decided what truly matters, after you've learned to use small pockets of time, and after you've replaced excuses with ownership, there is one final discipline that ties it all together. You must schedule success before everything else, because if you don't design your day, someone else will. Life has a way of filling empty space. If you leave your calendar open, demands will rush in to occupy it. Requests, meetings, errands, distractions, they are never in short supply. And if you allow your priorities to compete with all of that without protection, they will lose. Success must become an appointment, not an afterthought. Most people treat their dreams like hobbies. Something to do if there's time left over, but there is rarely leftover time. There is only allocated time. And what gets scheduled gets done. Think about it. If you have a doctor's appointment at 10 a.m., you show up. If you have a meeting at 2 p.m., you prepare. Why? Because it's on the calendar. It carries commitment. It carries consequence. What if you treated your goals the same way? What if your personal growth had a set time? What if your skill development had a protected hour? What if your planning, your reading, your preparation were non-negotiable appointments? When you schedule success, you send a message to yourself that your future matters. And here is something powerful. Scheduling creates structure, and structure creates freedom. That may sound backwards, but it's true. When you know that your most important work has a place in your day, you experience less stress, not more. You stop worrying about when you'll fit it in, because it's already accounted for. Uncertainty drains energy. Clarity restores it. Now, this doesn't mean your schedule must be rigid or perfect. Life will interrupt. Emergencies happen. Adjustments are necessary, but the key is this: your priorities should be the first entries in your calendar, not the last. Too many people schedule everything else, and then try to squeeze their goals into whatever scraps remain. That approach guarantees inconsistency, and inconsistency is the enemy of progress. Instead, reverse the order. Block time for growth first, protect it, defend it, treat it as essential. When you do this consistently, something remarkable happens. You begin living on purpose instead of by accident. There is a difference between reacting to your day and directing it. Reaction feels busy. Direction feels intentional. And intentional living is where fulfillment resides. Let me ask you, how different would your life look a year from now if you devoted just one focused hour each day to your most meaningful goal? Not when you felt like it, not when everything else was finished, but at a designated, protected time. An hour a day, becomes more than 300 hours a year. That's the difference between wishing and achieving. Scheduling also forces you to confront reality. It reveals whether your goals are genuine priorities or simply pleasant ideas. Because when you place something on the calendar, you are making a declaration. This matters enough to claim time for it. And claiming time requires courage. You may need to wake up earlier. You may need to reduce entertainment. You may need to say no to certain invitations, but every no to distraction becomes a yes to destiny. Remember, you cannot add more hours to the day, but you can reassign the hours you already have. You are the architect of your schedule. You are the designer of your routine, and your routine, repeated daily, becomes your life. The days turn into weeks. The weeks turn into months. The months turn into years. And what you consistently schedule determines what you eventually achieve. There is also a psychological power in keeping appointments with yourself. When you consistently show up for your scheduled growth, you build trust with yourself. You become someone who follows through, and self-trust is foundational to confidence. Confidence doesn't come from affirmations alone. It comes from evidence that you do what you say you will do. So schedule your learning, schedule your planning, schedule your preparation, schedule your thinking time. Protect those blocks as if your future depends on them, because it does. And don't wait for motivation. Motivation often follows action, not the other way around. When the time arrives, begin. Even if you don't feel like it, especially if you don't feel like it. Discipline bridges the gap between intention and achievement. If you want to find the time to succeed in life, stop searching for open spaces and start creating them. Put your dreams where they belong, at the center of your calendar. Because when you make success a scheduled priority instead of a hopeful possibility, your life begins to move with direction, power, and purpose. And what you schedule today determines who you become tomorrow.